Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's been a couple months since the latest Assassin's Creed entry launched, and over the course of weeks and months, it has begun to garner more and more bad will as Ubisoft is prioritizing monetization over some highly requested fixes and are continuing to push that envelope with quality of life implementations that should have no ties to monetization whatsoever. But Ubisoft is trying to monetize highly requested features, and it's certainly starting to rub a lot of people the wrong way. Now, first, let's talk about the issues that the game's been facing since launch. It's been a couple months, and still there's some game-breaking bugs that are prominent, and Ubisoft has yet to fix some of those. And this is a report from news outlet Kotaku, and among the first things that this article states reads that the game continues to feature months later a number of quest-breaking and sometimes entirely game-breaking bugs. One of them had me stuck for over a week when a character essential to a main storyline quest refused to appear at her designated point in Ravensthorpe. Another for a few days when a quest that was supposed to trigger new dialogue after I dropped a guy off my horse just never got around to it. And the issue is that these aren't newly discovered bugs. It's now almost April and many of these major bugs are still there since the November launch, and new ones keep piling up on top of that, with the game's latest round of free seasonal content based around the Austera festivities having had a number of aspects removed after they started causing crashes. Here we have another article from the Washington Post reporting similar things. Assassin's Creed Valhalla still has a game-breaking bug 4 months later, even after the new update. The bug that this article references straight up breaks your campaign, so the only solution is to essentially start the game all over again, and so this is what they had to say. A giant game-breaking bug first reported in November of 2020 still exists in Valhalla. The bug, which takes place during an unskippable main story quest, prevents players from interacting with any NPC in your village Ravensthorpe, including Ranvi, your main quest giver that allows you to pledge to new areas of the world and gain access to more content. So being unable to speak to this specific NPC means that progress is halted indefinitely. You're essentially stuck in a permanent game state where you can't progress the main storyline and basically cannot do anything except roam the now empty feeling map. Side quests like Reda's timed quest, Velka's quests, and river raids can't be activated either, since they require you to interact with a Ravensthorpe NPC to start. So yeah, a lot of your progression happens by speaking to NPCs in Ravensthorpe, and there is a bug that completely disables your ability to speak to those NPCs. And this has been around and still goes unresolved months after launch. And this isn't just a minor aesthetic bug. We're talking about something that will literally break your playthrough of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that will literally force you to start all over again. Saddest part is that not only do players not know what is causing this issue, not even Ubisoft is apparently fully aware of what's causing this, even months after launch, and apparently reloading an earlier autosave does not fix this bug. The only option is to restart the entire experience or wait for a Ubisoft fix. And given that Ubisoft doesn't seem to be making this a top priority, who knows when exactly we'll get that fix from the developers, who seem more focused on things like additional forms of monetization. And what I mean by Ubisoft prioritizing monetization over things that people are highly requesting is that they're releasing things like armor sets on their store. That stuff is exclusive to the market, to the store. You cannot earn some of these armor sets in-game, and some of these do offer gameplay advantages, and that's why we've got articles like this highlighting how fans are furious at Ubisoft for prioritizing microtransactions over DLC and just general updates. So scrolling down, players who want good-looking armor with decent stat bonuses have to buy them via the in-game store, for instance. Meanwhile, the armor sets available in-game are either a grind to unlock or don't appear until much later in the experience. It's a far cry from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which had an exorbitant amount of gear for players to pick and choose from. Now, I do like the approach that Assassin's Creed Valhalla goes for with armor sets, quality over quantity, instead of giving you just a barrage of loot. But if you're gonna take advantage of that for the sake of monetization, well, then that's just gonna make for a less fulfilling experience, as detailed by this Reddit user in a popular and viral post on the official Assassin's Creed subreddit that has garnered over 6,000 upvotes and 96% approval rate. Basically, it points out how there are now 9 armor sets in microtransactions store, just as many as in the entire base game. Half of the armors available in the game are exclusive only to people who are willing to spend money on extremely overpriced microtransactions. And indeed, these transactions are far from micro. And as Ubisoft prioritizes new microtransactions items, meanwhile, players feel as though they've gotten very little content over these last few months. And it is detailed right here how this isn't just cosmetics only microtransactions. The microtransactions can actually affect gameplay and in some cases be rather overpowered. These aren't just armor skins that you're buying, these are armor sets that can offer tangible advantages that are exclusive to the store. And for the armor set that do eventually make their way to everyone, to the entire player base rather than those willing to pay for microtransactions, Ubisoft would not only make them event exclusive, but also put very little effort in the armor's visual design. Basically a reskin with some blood splatters on it is how this individual described it. This on its own is hard to overlook, but the fact that Ubisoft is doing this amidst a time when the game is broken, when there are elements of it that could cripple one's playthrough, and are not prioritizing that, and are selling additional forms of monetization, charging people more money when their base game still has plenty of fixing to be done. That's what takes all of this above and beyond. That's what is especially pissing people off. But as if all that wasn't enough, Ubisoft and the Assassin's Creed franchise seem to be trying to inch their way towards being able to monetize the Transmog feature that we have seen from past Ubisoft titles like Assassin's Creed Odyssey and more recently Immortal Phoenix Rising. Assassin's Creed Valhalla lacked that feature, and while it was announced that the change appearance feature or Transmog feature is being added to Valhalla finally, unfortunately there is a caveat in that it costs what they call a bit of silver. What they mean by a bit of silver is that every time you transmog, you're shelling out 50 silver a pop, which you'll hand over to Gunnar in Ravensthorpe for every piece you want to aesthetically alter. So it's not 50 for a whole armor set, it's 50 per piece. And so a full armor set would cost you 250 silver. And if you want to change your armor's design further by either switching back because you change your mind or by trying out new designs and combinations, well, that's 50 silver a pop. And silver, for those who don't know, is the in-game currency of Assassin's Creed. Valhalla is the main currency. Now, while it is easier to obtain silver early on in Valhalla, unfortunately, your silver acquisition rate is very front-loaded once you complete a good chunk of activities on the world map. The rate at which you earn silver is going to decrease quite a bit, quite substantially. And Ubisoft is counting on that because, well, there is in fact the ability to purchase silver by spending real money on Helix credits or Helix points, which is the premium currency that you can use to purchase the silver. This is a stark contrast to how Transmog worked in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which was readily available, which could be done from the menu very conveniently, and which was completely free. You could just play around with Transmog willy-nilly with no limitations. But in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, with Transmog for each piece of armor costing 50 silver, I mean, it's just gonna straight up discourage people from playing around with that system. They're gonna have to be a lot more stingy about when they decide to apply Transmog, which is detrimental to what should be just a quality of life change. This was intentionally done to make the process of earning silver to be able to transmog freely a grindy process so that you'd be more incentivized to just get the insufferable part out of the way by just directly purchasing the premium currency that will allow you to buy the in-game currency. It is what they call a time saver in an environment where the developers purposely made something grindier than it really needs to be. Transmog should be as easy as it was in Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Immortals Phoenix Rising, but Valhalla here represents an opportunity for Ubisoft to try to push the goalpost of monetizing Transmog forward inch by inch. If we let this slide, how much more egregious will things get? How much more in-game currency will it cost just for a basic quality of life feature like Transmog. And before you know it, you might see Ubisoft lock away Transmog as an exclusively premium feature that you can only use by spending real money on. Let's not kid ourselves, such a scenario is entirely possible if we let stuff like this slide, if we let stuff like this become normalized, if we let companies move that goalpost, if we give them an inch, they will take a mile. They will take everything. And I'm not the only one with these sentiments. The Assassin's Creed community is disappointed that Ubisoft would regress their transmog system on purpose to slowly but surely make it more and more monetizable. This move right here feels like a stepping stone towards that. And so if you go to the official Assassin's Creed subreddit and look at the patch notes for update 1.2, looking at the responses, you'll find plenty of people dissenting against this new transmog system. So somebody asked, why is the transmog system so clunky when it was near perfect from Odyssey? Somebody else responded with, these regressions from Odyssey are incredibly tedious. We all know exactly why. And somebody else aptly points this out. The real reason is so that they can have you buy silver with real money from the Helix store. We've got a similar thread here. Somebody saying, I use transmog in Assassin's Creed Odyssey every single day. What's the point of making it extremely tedious? I really don't understand how someone could decide to make a feature worse on purpose. Oh, I could. It's all about that cheddar, and no doubt something that they will implement across all their titles if it's successful, which is why we don't want to spend money on these microtransactions on things like transmog. Instead, call them out on their bullshit so that they stop in their tracks. Somebody else said, tying transmog to the blacksmith and a silver cost is such a step down from how Odyssey did it that I'm just not even excited for the feature anymore. Understandable. Again, less freedom to just play around without feeling like you're restricted in some way. Here's somebody else who said that it's a quality of life edition. It should be free. Yep, plenty of things sold through microtransactions in games these days should just be free, but greedy game companies be greedy. And you can see how this change hurts the experience. Somebody just straight up said, I will definitely not toy as much with it as I did in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I can attest to this. When I played Odyssey, I was transmogging constantly. And in Valhalla, if I were to do the same, I would have to keep spending 50 silver, 50 silver, 50 silver, and that stuff adds up, especially when we're dealing with entire armor sets. Also, 50 silver is not a small amount either, lol. This will just make me not want to experiment with different looks, since silver is already so hard to come by. And on top of 50 per piece and 250 for a full outfit, there are the weapons, 150 for weapons every time. It's 50 per piece, so 250 for a full outfit. That isn't even that small an amount in this game unless you abuse dupes or use cheat engines. For a one-time change, sure, but how often do people change gear? I know I change my look very often in Odyssey. If I were to do the same in this game, I'd literally have no money left before long. Ubisoft is counting on it, because when you run out of silver, you'll have that decision to make. Ugh, do I really want to grind for hours and hours and hours earning silver, or should I just spend money and just get it over with? That is the psychological manipulation at play here, and this is no accident. None of this is unintentional. None of this is stupidity on Ubisoft's part. They're trying to be very clever about goading you into spending additional money by presenting inconveniences that are highly unnecessary that they could resolve, but are choosing not to charge money for it. This is how game companies exploit microtransactions. They purposely strip out features and quality of life elements and content to sell all that back. And yet game companies will tell you that games have not gotten more expensive, that things have remained the same since a decade ago, games being sold at $60, trying to justify raising their prices to $70 when games have in fact gotten more expensive, just not directly through the base price point, but rather through the things that they're taking away and then selling back to you. And all this comes in weeks and months after launch, long after the first impressions and reviews, long after people have already bought this game. It genuinely surprises me that so many people are still wondering, why is Ubisoft doing this? Why would they make such a dumb decision? Because it's not a dumb business decision. It'll certainly incentivize people to spend more money, and that's what ultimately matters to them. They don't care about the sentiments of the community. They don't care if they're pissed off or not. If they're spending, that is the language that they will ultimately listen to. They know this is a worse transmog system than what was there in Odyssey, and that's the whole point. because making it worse means they can sell you the thing that makes it better. And if people aren't vocal about this and don't put their money where their mouth is, then they have no reason not to take it a step further with the next entry, and then yet another step further in the next one, and just make Transmog worse and worse until it is as good as paywalled. This is how other forms of monetization, like overpriced skins and loot boxes, were slowly but surely normalized into what they are today. And Transmog, is that yet another thing that we want to lose? I would certainly hope not. But that's just one man's take on the latest updates surrounding Assassin's Creed Valhalla and the way they're prioritizing monetization over fixing the game and giving people the content and the features that they've wanted without additional caveats and, you know, monetization greediness kind of seeped in there. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the latest developments, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.